Hi, everyone. Good morning. Oh, my God. So amazing to see all you women out there. I wrote Fair Play for you. It's my love letter to you, and especially the young ones who haven't partnered yet. You'll do it better than I did. Or I did, and now I'm very happily partnered, but you'll watch my story. So I'm going to start with a story that hopefully some of you can relate to. It's called The Case of the Drunk Man's Jacket. Probably not a slide you thought you'd see at a beautiful conference like this. Well, after my second son, Ben, was born, around 5 a.m., I wake up to take a one-day work trip to Seattle. And, I'm packing my breast pump, all the extra clothes I need just in case I leak through my shirt, extra documents, and, groggily I get into the taxi. And then I pull up to departures about 7 a.m. that day. And I get the following text from my husband. Some guy left his jacket and beer bottle on our lawn. Okay. So what am I supposed to do about that from the road? So I just put this drunk guy's text out of my mind, and I begin prepping for the Family Foundation board meeting that I'm leading later that day on the plane. You see, I'm a philanthropic advisor, and it's okay if no one knows what that means here, but you just have to picture that HBO show Succession. I work with those families. You should feel bad for me, but what I do with them is I create systems. I create systems for these family foundations and family businesses, their organizations, to thrive. And so I land in Seattle. I pump for 20 minutes in one of those pods. And then I arrive at my client's boardroom. And I'm leading an all-day meeting with 3 generations of family members that had been feuding so badly when I met them that every time my client's son spoke, my client would storm out of the room. But that was not what was happening on this day. On this day, all 3 generations of the family were communicating with grace and humor and generosity. And that's because over 5 years, we had created a family culture around shared values and systems where dad not only doesn't march out every time his son speaks, but all the 3 generations are communicating with grace and humor and generosity, even when they're making the most complex financial and organizational decisions for their family. So the meeting concludes. I have to pump again, but I was too embarrassed to pump in the family board meeting restroom because maybe pumps are better these days, but back then my portable pump would make these sex noises like, so I didn't want to explain what I was doing in the bathroom. So instead I found myself pumping in a dark stairwell of their building. True story. And then I raced to the airport to get home. So back to the crime scene. So it's 10:30 p.m. I'm arriving back at my house in the taxi. I'm dragging all my shit out of the cab and get to my house. And as I'm doing this, out of the corner of my eye, I see a jacket and a broken beer bottle. It was still there. It was still there. And so I decided to give my husband the benefit of the doubt. I was thinking, maybe he's dead. Or maybe he's trapped under a giant boulder. And so I put my breast milk in the refrigerator and I bring my stuff inside, and then I walk up the stairs to our bedroom and I find my husband. He's outstretched on our bed, but yes, he's not dead. In fact, he happily tells me with a smile that he's had 4 hours after our kids went to bed to watch SportsCenter, to finish a PowerPoint presentation, and to work out. Plenty of time to decompress from his long day. But not enough time, apparently, to pick up a jacket and a broken beer bottle he found on our lawn 16 hours earlier. And so I go back downstairs, because I don't know why I did that, but I wouldn't do it now. But, you know, the jacket was gross. The shattered bottle was a hazard for my toddler at the time. And I put on some sandwich gloves that I found from leftover sandwich duty from my school service. And I go outside and I, you know, put every shard of glass in the trash bag along with this, you know, wet coat. I take it out to the alley. I dump, you know, the garbage into the alley, and I walk back in my house. But my act of resistance that night was that I timed myself. And all in all, it took 12 minutes. 12 minutes from putting on those rubber gloves to finally peeling them off and dropping them at the foot of my husband's side of the bed, where I just said, "You're fucking welcome," and I stormed off. You see, I was taking a lot of lessons from my workday about communicating with grace and humor and generosity. And so as I stormed off, I realized I was so upset because my husband's morning text wasn't a, "Hey, can you believe it? This is gross." It was a, "I don't have time. This is on you. This is on you." And I started to think about that text, that 12 minutes, times thousands of "this is on yous," over 10 years of marriage and 2 kids at the time. And then I started to think about why we as women are racing against the clock from the fucking moment we wake up. But what I didn't understand that day was, why was this on me? Why is it that women are doing 2/3 of what it takes to run a home and family, regardless of whether we work outside the home? A statistic that I didn't know at the time, but obviously I was undeniably living. Well, I'm a trained lawyer and mediator, and I like to find win-win solutions to complex family problems. And so I put my researcher hat on to find out, why was this on us? Well, it turns out that while everything was defaulting to us, or as I like to call in Fair Play, she-faulting to us, it turns out that she-fault has a name. Actually, a couple names. It's called the second shift. It's called emotional labor. It's called the mental load. But it's called invisible work also, and that's my favorite. My favorite is invisible work, because that means that there's a modicum of a solution in there. Because what I started to think was, how can you value what you don't see? And so I thought, maybe, just maybe, if I could make visible all the invisible work I was doing for my home and family, that things would change, that finally Seth would value everything I was doing. And so I started to write things down that took more than 3 minutes of my time. So I couldn't quantify loving my kids, but I could quantify the time it took to buy flowers for their recital. I could write down how long it took me to make their school lunches, 10 minutes, or attend their dental appointments, 1 hour, or log on to the school form portal my fucking entire lifetime. Especially if you're locked out 3 times because you never know what that password is. And then I asked my friends, what do you do that may be invisible to your partner or your kids? And I asked this to hetero cisgender, same-sex couples. And texts and emails started pouring in. Friends of friends I didn't even know started to contribute to this text exchange. Things like, don't forget Elf on the Shelf, 1 hour times 20 nights, okay? Don't forget Girl Scout cookies ordering in sales, 5 hours. Don't forget applying sunscreen, 2 minutes for the application, but 30 minutes for the chase. And ultimately, I gathered all of these responses from women over 9 months, people I didn't even know who were contributing, into a giant spreadsheet. I don't know if anybody here likes Excel as much as I do, but I really love spreadsheets. And I was so proud of this 98-tab spreadsheet, over 1,000 items of invisible work that women do. And I titled it, the Should I Do Spreadsheet. And so I don't have time, because I'm under a ticking clock, to show you every single 98 of the tabs, but maybe if you can see, you can just get an idea. and on and on and on. And so one day, I finally get the courage to email off the 17 million megabyte spreadsheet to my husband with the subject line, "Can't wait to discuss." And I waited for his response. And finally it came into my inbox. I didn't even get the courtesy of the 3-monkey trio. I just got this sad fucking see no evil emoji. So in my house, right, there's a see no evil going on, but actually in other houses, the Should I Do Spreadsheet had unleashed a shitstorm. So I had women texting me, WTF, I had no idea I was doing it all. A woman, you can't make this stuff up, a woman from the Jewish Federation of Arizona left me a voicemail message, got my number and said, "Hi Eve, I got your Should I Do Spreadsheet. I just want to let you know that I'm not staying in my marriage." Okay. So the spreadsheet sort of let loose this rant without a solution. So what was really going on here, right? Well, what was clear to me was that email bombing my husband a 17 million megabyte spreadsheet was about as effective as a communication tool as dropping those rubber gloves at the foot of his side of the bed. And so maybe, I tried everything. I was just going to resign myself to doing it all, like the $10.8 trillion of unpaid labor that women do all over the world. That was a big New York Times feature yesterday. Maybe I was just going to resign myself to being one of the 10.8 trillion of unpaid labor workers in this country. Or I could get my ass in gear and become my own client. If you guys are too young to remember that guy in New York that said, "I'm not just the hair club president, but I'm the first client." Well, that's it. So I wanted to become my first client and start testing what I know. I wanted to take what I knew from a decade-long career of working with complex families on complex family issues and bringing domestic harmony to those families and bring it into the home. But see, mediators, we say that often the presenting problem is not the real problem. So in order to find out what the real problem was, I decided to go out into the community and interview 500 men and women, same-sex, opposite-sex couples, varying socioeconomic status all over the country. That took 7 years, but I wanted to do it to find out what the real problem was. What is this problem? So I found that the smallest details were causing the biggest problems. So we're all fighting over, with kids and without, drunk guys' jackets, broken beer bottles, who left the sponge in the sink last, because there's bacteria and it's wet, and why'd you do that? Who didn't put the garbage liner back into the garbage can? And we're actually divorcing over these things. See, 30% of marriages end over the resentment that women feel over the unpaid labor in the home. And actually, I think it's probably higher than that. That's just what's recorded. But see, again, we say, the presenting problem is not the real problem. So what was the real problem? Why am I here to talk to you today? Not just about my marriage, but it's what I found. My core finding in going out into the 500 men and women in this country was that men in society, we don't value women's time the same as we value men's time. That was my core finding. But here's the rub. Here's the rub. Neither do we. So I went around this country and I was hearing things from women like, of course I pick up the drunk guy's jacket, take the kids to school, pick up the extra slack because my husband makes more money than me. Well, that's a terrible argument because even in the same job, women make less money. So we'll be saying that for the next 100 years. Hopefully not, but because of Diane. Others said to me, well, it's easier for me to do it because women are wired differently. We're better multitaskers. So I went to the top neuroscientists in this country. My favorite was this crotchety old white man who looked at me and said, imagine Eve, we can convince half the population that they're better at wiping asses and doing dishes. How great for the other half of the population. Okay, so that's not true. We're not wired differently. Other women said to me, well, in the time it takes me to tell my boyfriend or husband what to do or my same-sex partner what to do, because these patterns were coming over into opposite-sex relationships as well, because the patriarchy is strong. In the time it takes me to tell him what to do, I might as well just do it myself. Okay, so I went to the top behavioral economists in this country. It's a terrible argument for women. Because of course you want to teach someone how to wipe asses and do dishes. Otherwise, you're going to be doing it for the rest of your life. And my favorite were women and men in the same job. I sought out 2 producers in the same company, 2 colorectal surgeons, 2 shipping supervisors. And women were still saying, well, my husband's super overwhelmed. He really needs to, unwind. He likes to do one task at a time, and I can find the time. Well, I'm here to tell you that unless you're Albert Einstein and you know how to fuck with the space-time continuum, there's actually no way to find time. There's no way. But there's a different expectation over how we use our time, and until we retire these toxic time messages we give ourselves, nothing is going to change. So instead, what I ask you today is to think about time as 24 hours. See, what I found was that men, women, and society view men's time as finite like diamonds, and women's time as infinite like sand. But what if instead we had a world where time was measured not in dollars and all these patriarchal assumptions, but actually in hours, 24 hours. And we recognize that women and men both just have 24 hours in a day. And we should have equal choice over how we use that time, that all time is created equal. And then actually an hour holding your child's hand in the pediatrician's office is just as valuable to society as an hour in the boardroom. Thank you. So I started to work on an organizational system, back to the solution. We've 100 years of the problem. So what's the solution? Well, I started to work on a home organizational system that was predicated on this idea that my time is as valuable as Seth's time. And when I was able to say that to him with some grace and humor and generosity, that on that fateful drunk man's jacket night, that I felt like he wasn't valuing my time, he was finally able to listen to me. And then when we both agreed that our time is diamonds, and we should have equal choice over how we use it, things started to change. So while I don't have time to tell you, ironically, everything about the fair play system, what I will say is that at the heart of the system is the idea that when you take agency in your own life, it reverberates out. And fair play is a card game of 100 cards that you hold that represents all the tax for your family. And it's not based on 50-50. It's based on the idea of ownership. So what do I mean by that? Well, everything you need to know about fair play, you can learn from the life-changing magic of mustard. And what I mean by that is that somebody has to know your second son, Johnny, likes French's yellow mustard on his protein, otherwise he chokes, he won't eat it. That's, in project management, organizational management, what we call conception. Then somebody has to know that mustard's running low and put it on a grocery list with every other thing you need for the week. That in organizational management is what we call planning. And then someone has to get their butt to the store to purchase the French's yellow mustard. That in organizational management is what we call execution. And that in my research is where men step in. And they bring home spicy Dijon every fucking time. And I asked you for French's yellow mustard. And that's where fair play became a love letter to men. It became a love letter to men because men all over this country were saying to me, I do want to do more in my home, but I can't get anything right. And women were saying to me, well, you want me to trust my husband with the estate planning card, with my living will? The dude can't even bring home the right fucking type of mustard. So back to being a mediator. The presenting problem is not the real problem. Is this about mustard or beer bottles? No, but this is about trust and what happens when we stop losing trust in our partners. Also, there is beauty in holding the conception, planning, and execution together. When you own the full mustard situation, it is game-changing. And so I want to end on one quick story, because I know I'm going a little over, about how, again, 50-50 is not the right equation, but when you start with just one card, it can be transformative. So I talked to this couple named Julie and Ed in holidays of 2018. I had interviewed them for Fair Play. Ed is the kind of guy who said things to me like, I'm the CEO outside the home, my wife's the CEO in the home. I want to throw up and whatever, but he's a nice guy. So Julie, his wife, calls me. She identifies herself as an accidental traditionalist, like I did, with a moon rising in my way or move out. And she tells me she's breaking down on the holidays. She has to take out the ornaments. She's planning a trip. She's taking her kids to school. She's trying to stay in her part-time job. She's packing their lunches, and she's breaking down. And she wants to start Fair Play. I said, well, that's a terrible time to start anything new. It's the fucking holidays. But I say, okay, just tell me what's breaking you. So she tells me it's her second son, Brody's, second grade Secret Santa project. Okay, say that 5 times fast, because it has to be done from scratch. Schools, again, are complicit in some of these things that we do to women and men. And she wants, so I said, well, give that to Ed. Let Ed take the homework card for one project for your house. You're holding all the other cards, one project, homework, let him own it from start to finish. And then she gives me 100 reasons why you can't. Well, because Ed would make a dirty sock puppet, it would be a terrible Secret Santa project, he won't get it in on time, all these things. So I say to her, okay, let's back up. Let's back up, because ultimately what Fair Play is about is values conversations. Values conversations are hard, but when you give someone boundaries, like a card game to talk about values, it actually makes it really constructive and easy. So I say to her, what is your why? Why are you breaking down? Why is this project breaking you? So she tells me it's because it's a signature second grade project for the school. You're supposed to care about opening a homemade gift from a friend as much as you would a $100 Nerf gun. Okay, so that's pretty meaningful. And then she says, her son Brody, the popular kindergartner, he drew a name of a little girl that Julie noticed when she walked into the schools new that year, and she walks up and down waiting for the bell to ring. No one greets her. She just waits until they line up. And so she's thinking, Julie's thinking, what if Brody makes a beautiful Secret Santa gift for this new little girl to the school? He's popular, he's been there for a while, and says, welcome to the school. She's been there 3 months. We'd like to welcome her to the school. So I say, that's a powerful why. Why don't you just say that to Ed? Not the other crap, not giving him a list of things you need to buy to finish the props, whatever you want to do with him later. Just say that to Ed, just your why. So she does, and I get them on Bluetooth after the holidays. And Ed tells me he begins Googling Secret Santa projects for little girls with his son Brody. That's conception. And then they decide on a popsicle stick jewelry box. And then Ed tells me that he writes down everything they need to build this jewelry box. Colored popsicle sticks, glitter, glue. Mr. CEO outside the home even tells me Brody needed a knob because he didn't want the little girl to need 2 hands to open the jewelry box. He wanted her to be able to open it with 1 hand so she could take her jewelry out at the same time. So they need a knob. That's planning. And then Ed tells me that he discovered this really cool store called Michael's. And it's not that difficult because you could just go there and get everything you need in one place. I said, well, that's awesome. I'm going to check out that store. And he goes with Brody to Michael's. And they come home and they start building the jewelry box. And Julie on Bluetooth chimes in. She says, my life changed that day, Eve. I say, okay, well, that's hyperbolic, but okay, why? And she said, because out of the corner of my eye, when I came home from an errand and I saw Brody and Ed building that jewelry box, I noticed that Ed had glitter on his hands. And I said to her, what was so meaningful about you seeing that? And she said, it was the first time. It was the first time I felt like he was truly in it with me. And because glitter's a pain in the ass to get out, and I was happy it was on his clothes and not hers. So then I got Ed on board. Ed is a Fair Play disciple, and we got to talk. He's a big head of a big multinational corporation, and we started to talk about what would Fair Play look like in the workplace. Well, what he said to me is that if I truly believe that women's time is valuable, that they're equal to men's time, then I'll look at my pay equity policies. And then he says to me, if I truly believe in fair play, then I'll create a workplace where you don't have to raise your hand to take a piss, where you can be an adult and leave the workplace at 2 and not feel shamed if you have to take your child. And I can go hold my child's hand at the pediatrician's office. So if you don't believe me, this is a Fair Play couple. They got this letter from their child. I love you so much because you take care of me and Sam, and when we go to the doctor, you hold our hands. I love you so much, more than you know. Why are we here today? We're here about building better societies. Thank you for convening us to do that. And part of that is inviting men to step into their full power in the home so that we as women can step into our full power in the world. And it all starts with glitter. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.